Hey, how's it? I'm good. They're here, yeah. I'm connected on one.
We need to.
Okay.
Amina, can you hold this?
What's not going to work? You see, she's got the right idea. Get on your knees.
All right, so that media briefing, you can see NUMSA's spokesperson there, Phakamile Hlubi-Majola, about to address the media. This happens, Peter, after the meeting between the union itself and the union representing the cabin crew as well, and the SAA management.
Yes, indeed. Let's try and listen in and see what they're saying.
Where's my eyeline? I'm gonna try because I'm reading, so you guys must just understand, okay? But I will look up in that general direction, okay? All right. Everybody's here, okay? First and foremost, we want to thank you as the National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa, together with the South African Cabin Crew Association. We want to thank members of the media for their patience this afternoon. We apologize profusely for making you wait, but we are here now and we have an announcement. We would like you to please give us the opportunity to read the statement in full. Thereafter, if you have questions, you can then ask us thereafter. Okay? Thank you very much. All right, we begin. NUMSA and SACA responds to the offer tabled by SAA management dated 14 November 2019. Can you all hear me? Yeah. Thank you. The National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa and the South African Cabin Crew Association are responding jointly to the offer which SAA has presented to our members. SAA has presented the following offer to our members. 5.9 wage increase to be paid in March 2020 and the back pay to be paid in installments beginning April the 1st, 2020. We have rejected this proposal in favor of the following. Number one, 8% wage increase across the board to be paid on the 13th of December 2019, and 50% of the back pay to be paid with the increase on the 13th of December 2019. The remainder of the back pay will be paid on the 27th of January 2020. Number two, we are demanding the insourcing of all services which are outsourced and which SAA has the capacity to fulfill. For example, security, cleaning, IT, ground handling and logistics. We reject the offer by SAA management of the creation of a task team to deal with insourcing and the terms of reference. We do not have the luxury of time, and this needs urgent, immediate action. These inflated contracts are crippling South African Airways finances. Management wants to drag this process out by setting up terms of reference and establishing a task team to deal with insourcing. This is unacceptable. We have been signing terms of reference in the past and management does not honor them. Many of these contracts run on a month-to-month basis and the profit margins are grossly inflated. Furthermore, Ernst & Young forensic reports outline in detail major contracts which must be urgently revised because of their impact on SAA's balance sheet. They have already done the work for SAA management, and what SAA is proposing will duplicate this process and lengthen it unnecessarily. If this action is taken today, and by this action we mean insourcing, with the urgency that it deserves, this will immediately create funding for the airline. This money is desperately needed in order for it to operate and to pay for wage increases. We have a recent example of this where this has worked. At South African Airways Technical, there was a contract with a company called KWE which had inflated costs. The service was for warehousing and it cost SAA Technical 22 million per annum. It was immediately cancelled and now SAAT is saving approximately 11 million per annum as a result of that decision. This was because of pressure from the unions, and this is why We cannot accept the explanation given by SAA management because this is a long process and it will require a task team with terms of reference. We demand decisive action because we simply cannot afford for these contracts to continue. They are literally bleeding SAA dry every day. These include contracts such as aircraft cleaning, ground handling, security maintenance, baggage handling, passenger aid services and ramp, busing, document verification and crew transport airside. The names of the companies which are problematic in this regard are Bid Air Services, Swissport, Saposetu, Rishebile, Murena, Asda, Mehlo Mahle, Checkport and others. We do not believe that our demands are unreasonable. Much has been said in the media that labor is SAA's biggest cost driver. This is not true. Labor is not SAA's biggest cost driver. SAA's biggest cost driver is the 25 billion per annum spend on procurement, in particular fuel. Management has said that the retrenchment of 944 workers will save the airline 700 million. But this airline executive management and board has consistently refused to tackle these issues, which have a direct bearing on the high debt levels affecting the airline. This also has a direct impact on workers' ability to receive an increase. Management is willing to lose 50 million a day by cancelling flights in anticipation of the strike instead of redirecting that money to the wage demand. If SAA was to meet the wage demand of 8% from workers, this would cost the airline approximately 100 million per annum. In other words, the cost of 2 days flight cancellation is equivalent to our entire wage demand for the whole year, which is far less than the daily cost of cancelling flights. It is therefore senseless that management would choose an option which deliberately deepens the financial crisis at the airline. The board and executive management has demonstrated once again through this offer that they are defending corruption. It is tolerating thieves and the looting of the airline. The options which we have placed on the table as unions can swiftly remedy SAA's financial crisis. Management should take these steps if they are genuine about saving the airline and making it profitable once again. As we continue to prepare for the strike tomorrow, we are hopeful that we will receive positive feedback from management on the issues which we have raised above. Ultimately, our goal is to save SAA and its subsidiaries and to save jobs and ensure that the airline is profitable again. We cannot afford to allow this status quo to continue. This statement was issued on behalf of SACA and NUMSA. Any questions?
How long do you plan on going on strike?
The strike is an indefinite strike until management gives in to our demands.
So if it takes a month, 2 months, you will go on strike?
It's an indefinite strike until our members say enough.
And do you know what time maybe we'll be starting tomorrow?
We're starting at 4 a.m. tomorrow morning. In other words, the first shift is at 4 a.m. And on that at that 4 a.m. shift, members will not rock up.
So is it going to be a picket as well, or is it just a stay away strike?
We will be picketing. In fact, I think Comrades can give details.
We'll be picketing right here, this exact spot, tomorrow at 4 a.m.
So I just want to understand, is there no way you can meet each other in the middle? Because SA seems not moving from their position. You seem to also not move in position, so it's a deadlock. Workers go on strike, no pay, SA loses billions and billions, which could jeopardize the airline, as they say.
I think it's important that as members of the media and members of the public, you must understand that our demands are not just for a wage increase. We don't want to be back here 4 years from now. You mustn't forget that in 2015, we were told that SAA is in a crisis, 1,000 workers must be retrenched. They retrenched those 1,000 workers. They did nothing about the procurement spend, which is actually the thing that's responsible for the financial crisis facing SAA. Now, our demands are speaking directly to the problem affecting SAA. And we are saying that if the management of this airline is genuine about dealing with this financial crisis, then it will accept what we're putting on the table. It will deal with this question of insourcing, and it will do so immediately, without any delays, without any task teams, because we are at the point where we cannot wait anymore. We're at a crisis situation. We are concerned that even at this point, this management still wants to play games and talk about task teams when there's no time for task teams, when there's no money. We are saying that for this to work, management must accept once and for all that it has to deal with its procurement spend. It must take the necessary decision to either cancel or review contracts which are having a very detrimental impact on its balance sheet. SAA says it makes 50 million a day. Where does that money go to? It goes to this wasteful expenditure. Workers are facing job losses again because this management has failed to deal with this very, very crucial issue.
Sorry, I just have one question. The SAA board in Scopa in Parliament yesterday said that this strike could cost SAA up to 15 million rand a day, which SAA cannot afford to lose because this is going to directly impact the workers. What do you guys have to say about that? Because you are planning on striking, so...
Our question is, can SAA continue to afford to pay 25 billion in procurement spend? That's our response to that. And we are saying that our demand speaks directly to the thing that's actually driving costs at SAA. I don't know if you'd like to add a
and we must make this very clear. It's going to cost 50 million a day. However, they are willing to redirect that money to cancelling flights. 50 million, as we've just articulated, 50 million a day. 2 days equals to what they would have paid us for a year. If that's not ridiculous, I don't know what is. And I think management is taking us for a ride, and the employees can see that. So we are going out on strike tomorrow, for definite. 4 a.m. in the morning. We are available the entire evening to talk further. What we've read to you, we've given to management, and we are serious. We're not backing down. And it's shocking that people like the board, the minister has not even engaged us, and we must say this. It clearly indicates that they're not interested in saving this airline. We've been at pains for many, many years to root out corruption, to sort out procurement issues. And this is the time. There's no other time but now for us.
And I think it's also important that you guys must understand something here. It is absolutely unacceptable that we are still having this conversation when in 2015 we had this conversation. Why should workers lose jobs for the failures of executive management? We are currently living in a country with an economy that is not growing, with unemployment at 38.5% for those who've given up work. How dare this government even allow SAA management to consider retrenchments as an option? Secondly, if this was taking place at any corporate company where a board in a period of less than 5 years has brought a company to the brink of collapse, what would happen to the board? They'd be fired immediately. Why is this board still there? Our question to Scopa is, why are you not doing your work? Why are you not firing the board? This has been a consistent demand from trade unions that this board has failed, and it continues to fail. And as far as we're concerned, it is only interested in protecting corruptors, thieves, and looters, which is why their solution does not actually speak to the problems affecting the airline.
My final question, just one. Tito Mboweni has indicated a few times now that he wants to get rid of SAA. He's been saying he hasn't been making money since 2011, too many bailouts. You just understand why a government needs a national carrier. Aren't you scared that this might, just, I'm not saying only you mentioned issues on their side too, that this might be the catalyst he needs for privatization?
I think Tito needs to take himself back to the history of this airline. SAA many times has flown routes that are unprofitable on instruction from the shareholder. Which is government. I mean, SAA didn't take these routes because of making money or for profit. They took it on instruction from the shareholder. So this is historical. So Tito must take a back and look into history. And look at where we've come from. SAA for a long time was a developmental airline, so we were told. Until one day that the looters, it actually came to the front that it's unsustainable. That's when people started making money about SAA must now become profitable. But no one has ever done anything about the looting and the corruption. Actually, people are using it to line their pockets. And we are suffering as employees. And Tito must really rethink his position on SAA. And he's actually contradicting his position. I mean, his last budget speech, he spoke about growing the employment rate. If 11,000 employees of South African Airways lose their jobs, how does that assist his budget speech? It does not. So government needs to start being honest.
And I think it's also important that people must understand that if you think that this is a benefit to South Africa and the masses, it by no means is. South African Airways plays a very important role, particularly for small and medium-sized enterprises. You get rid of an airline like this, we are all going to suffer. There is no airline privately owned that cares about affordable airfare rates. A state-owned airline can do that. So just like with Eskom, there's no way we're going to have cheap electricity if you privatize Eskom. Whatever you're paying now, expect to pay triple that amount once the private sector takes over. That's exactly the case at SAA. It is ludicrous, it is ridiculous, it is unfair, and it is immoral that the working class must pay for the sins of management who for the last 5 to 10 years have deliberately, and we say deliberately, driven this airline to destruction. Thank you. All right.
Apart from cutting down the contractors, which you feel they are using a change of money, what other strategies do you think?
Well, for us, really, the issue around the procurement spend is a very critical issue, because you must compare the 25 billion procurement spend to the 700 million that would be saved if workers were to lose their jobs. I think for us, we are basically emphasizing where the real problem is. And of course, the removal of the board members, we believe, would definitely help us in achieving the goals that this airline needs to achieve. But also, more importantly, and I think this is a part of where our demands lie, and we've said this very consistently, SAA has certainly not done enough to recover the monies that were lost through corruption, looting, and theft by senior executive management. There are 9 forensic investigations which have taken place at SAA. This airline has failed to implement the findings and recommendations of those forensic reports. It has focused only on the criminal side. You've heard the CFO, for example, talking about the fact that Vusi Pikoli has involved the NPA. That is strictly from a criminal and civil perspective. The work that needs to be done in this building is that the ER executives and the HR executives must suspend, fire, and discipline all executives' names in forensic reports. They have not done that. Some they have shuffled around and moved them to different parts of the business. Others have received written warnings. The only clear action has been taken against ordinary workers. We reject that. For once, SAA must demonstrate that it really cares about corruption. We want to see these executives fired. We want to see monies recovered. Until that happens, we are not interested in hearing about retrenchments.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
All right, so that's the media briefing from NUMSA as well as SA Cabin Crew Association. So briefing the media there, I think in a nutshell, really rejecting the offer that's been made by the South African Airways management. They made an offer of about 5.9% wage increase by March of 2020 to back pay it in installment by the end of April next year. So their initial demand really was 8% wage increase, which they wanted by the 13th of December this year.
Yes, indeed. So that's the disparity in terms of the wage itself and also the timing of the back pay. The union's saying, look, we want 50% of this this year and the rest of it by January next year, 8% versus 5.9%. But don't forget that the crux of this matter is that the retrenchment of about 900 workers, because SA is looking towards trying to get rid of a fifth of its workforce, as they say, as part of a restructuring process. And the union's saying we don't want to have anything to do with that. In fact, they were saying that in 2015, 1,000 workers were retrenched at that time, and what they've been saying is that the real issue is not labour. That's not the biggest cost for SAA. That the biggest problem that SAA has is procurement, and it's things like fuel. I was speaking to an aviation expert yesterday, and he said that why other airlines such as Comair is that they do careful hedging on fuel prices, and this is something perhaps SAA perhaps hasn't been doing, so there could be some merit in that argument. But they also pointed out that there are a number of contracts outsourcing that's taking place that they felt were corrupt and were bleeding the SAA of money. Contracts in aircraft cleaning, security, all manner of contracts, and the unions were saying that these are the ones that were bleeding the airline dry. But I think in the end, the big issue and the big amount they talked about, SAA saying that they are going to cancel flights for today and for tomorrow and for Saturday.
And Saturday.
At a cost of 50 million rand
and of course,
a day.
Yeah, Labour saying that they're willing to lose that kind of money instead of directing it to their wage demands.
And they're saying that that wage demand is 100 million for the entire year. So SAA willing to lose 100 million in 2 days instead of paying the workers 100 million over a year. So that's the arguments that are being put forward. We'll wait and see just how the management responds to the letter that's been given now to management by the unions.
But as it is now, the strike is happening tomorrow. It's indefinite until the members tell them to stop. That's what Phakamile has said. So from tomorrow AM at 4 a.m., the members would go on strike, and some of them will be picketing there where the media briefing was at the offices of the South African Airways. Let's take a quick break.